Okay, we're live again.
We're live again. All right. Second time is always the best time
Okay,
to start refresh.
receiving your content. Live stream is
Eh,
still offline. Okay,
there it
there
is.
it
There
is.
it is.
Oh, whoa, okay.
Did you steal my video?
Did I? No, it's not. Is it the same ocean?
It's who? It looks very similar. Where did you get this? Where did you get this clip of the ocean?
Oof. At like some of those stock video websites.
Oh, motherfucker! Someone. I didn't upload any of this. This might actually be. It could be mine.
Oh, really? Like
I don't know.
you
Yeah,
uploaded
like
to
no, I didn't upload. No, like this is like footage I've recorded, or it's just very similar to the footage I recorded. Either way, it's fine. There we go. Give me a second.
just share it on all the discords so people
Yeah.
are watching.
Um, Putting it on Twitter. Chilling myself out for you. You're welcome.
Do you have this stream? Oh, two people are watching. Is that just you and me?
I don't have the. I think I might have it up. Let's see here. Ayo. Yeah, I'm actually gonna pop the chat out so I can close the stream. Yeah.
Okay.
I need to.
And
I'm-
can you get the
What's up,
link
bud?
to the stream and put it on some of the
I did. I put it in the
shilling?
put it in
Okay.
a few-
Nice,
yeah, shilling.
Nice. All right. Okay. Let's actually start. Hey, I'm Filter Umbrella. That's my YouTube name. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm with my friend here, Zach. Zach, introduce
Hey, what's up?
yourself.
I'm Zach, aka InferiorDesign, and my pronouns are he and him as well.
Yep. His channel is in the link in the description, so y'all go. My 16 followers, go follow him if you feel like it, which you should. And we're just gonna talk about politics today. We're gonna talk about three stories that have been on our minds. One is the decision of the Democratic National Committee to essentially strip away some of the powers of their superdelegates, which of course has previously in the past, mainly in the 2016 election, been very key in deciding who the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party will be. And of course,
Yes.
Bernie Sanders was very upset, and his supporters were very upset at some of the structural ways that the Democratic National Committee organized itself.
As they
Um,
should be.
All right, and then the second topic that we will cover, if you feel like sticking around, is land expropriation without compensation in South Africa. Some of the stink behind that, the reason white nationalists and racists in general find that such an alluring topic, etc., etc. Those are all things coming up. Why our views on expropriation might or might not be justified, and the way South Africa should handle this responsibly. The last topic, if you really, really feel like sticking around, will be the recent shooting in Jacksonville, Florida, I believe, in
Yes.
which two people died. It was a video game contest streaming Madden. And we're just going to talk about in general about how this story ties into gun control in the United States in general and what we can do about it to prevent more violent deaths in the future, and so on. Okay, so our first topic we will jump right into.
Most certainly.
And let me just... Yeah, okay. So I'll read a little bit off of this Vox article because I think it's a good overview of what exactly happened. The Democratic Party is still parsing the 2016 primary contest between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders on Saturday, voted to limit the power of so-called superdelegates in selecting the party's presidential nominee. It's a win for the party's left, members of which have voiced concerns that the prior system favored preordained picks and diminished voters' say. And I believe only pledged delegates whose votes are decided by the primary or caucus results for their states and territories will get to vote for the first time around at the Democratic National Convention, where the party picks its presidential nominee. Superdelegates, DNC members, elected officials, and party leaders who are unpledged and basically get to vote for whomever they want, won't get to vote on the first ballot if the convention is contested. They will get to take part in subsequent rounds of voting, but historically that would not have mattered. The Democratic nominee has been settled on the first ballot of every convention since the 1970s. Okay, so I can probably tell that both of us are very pleased, initially at least, at this story. Yeah. I think we were both Bernie bros. I think I'm much farther to the left than you. But yeah, but we both did support Bernie Sanders in the 2016 primary. I think his movement is the most important thing America needs right now. We need a strong social democratic position in politics. That's just unquestionable at this point regarding everything we're facing, from climate change to income inequality. People like Bernie need to win not only in the House and the Senate, but also hopefully the presidency. And yeah, and the superdelegate system is something that was used, or could have very effectively been used, to essentially snub people like Bernie Sanders out of the democratic process. And the fact that this is gone, I think it's a big win. But I think I just want to get your take on some of the responses that, let's say, more establishment Democrats have had towards this news. So this is a HuffPost article. Democrats debate effect on superdelegate reform on racial representation. And I think the main person they interview in this article is a woman named... is a woman named Daughtry, and I forgot her first name. There it is. Okay, whose name is Leah D. Daughtry, and she made this tweet. Can you see the stream? Okay, but essentially she tweeted out, now that people of color, women, and LGBTQ plus leaders have a significant say in the nomination process, suddenly the rules need to be changed, effectively eliminating their participation. Funny how that happens. And I felt like just pointing this tweet out because I think it's representative of the way a lot of establishment Democrats are taking the story. They're essentially saying that these sick Bernie bros are homophobic and sexist and racist, and they want to take away, our representation within the Democratic Party. And I guess what's just your response to that? Okay, wait. Oof. I think something messed up. I don't think your audio is being recorded. Okay. This is my first time trying this, so no one go after me. Um yeah.
Such as live streaming.
Okay. I think you should are you able to hear yourself right now?
Testing. I don't hear myself on the stream yet, but it's a significant delay. Yeah, I don't hear myself at all. No, I hear myself now. I hear myself.
Okay.
Now.
Okay.
There we go.
There it is. Hey, okay. So, oof. Yeah.
So, my opinion on this is that, just to restate.
Okay, I think let's kind of redo this. Oof.
Yeah,
okay.
let's redo it.
We won't go too far back, but we'll go like, oof. All y'all 4 people watching, I'm so sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry.
You're a degenerate.
Yeah, and if you, yeah, okay. No comment from the audience. Oh, hey, Nathan Teagan, thank you. Yes, you can hear 2 people now. That's great. Okay. Okay, so how about you introduce the topic this time over, Zach? If you want to.
Sure thing. So, DNC votes to largely strip superdelegates of presidential nominating power. Right, so that's our current topic of discussion.
Yeah.
And then you have this tweet up by this particular establishment Democrat, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Oof. Okay. I think I'll just introduce. I'll read off of this Vox article directly.
Yeah.
Okay. Democrat Party, still parsing the 2016 primary contest between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, on Saturday voted to limit the power of so-called superdelegates in selecting the party's presidential nominee. It's a win for the party's left, members of which have voiced concerns that the prior system favored the preordained picks and diminished voters' say. Only pledged delegates, whose votes are decided by the primary caucus results for their states or territories, will get to vote for the first time around at the Democratic National Convention, where the party picks its presidential nominee. Superdelegates, DNC members, elected officials, and party leaders who are unpledged and basically get to vote for whomever they want won't get to vote on the first ballot if the convention is contested. They will, however, get to take part in subsequent rounds of voting, but historically that would not have mattered. The Democratic nominee has been settled on the first ballot of every convention since the 1970s. So this is effectively taking a lot of voting power away from essentially party insiders. You know, people who are either elected Democrats or are some way close to the Democratic system or the Democratic Party, and who the party somehow has decided that they deserve more of a say. So these people who have historically had a lot of power in the democratic process for the Democratic Party, their voices will, I guess, be diminished, and they will go back to a more democratic way of thinking.
Yes, and this allows for people that run sort of a more grassroots campaign, like Bernie Sanders did in 2016, to have more say and to have more sway within the system.
Yeah, it definitely opens up the party so that people like Bernie Sanders, you know, non-establishment Democrats, can really run and can actually have a very good chance at competing in elections, particularly presidential elections, but also, you know, in general, any election that the DNC would hold. So yeah, we both agree that this is like a very good step and a move in the right direction for the party as a whole. You know, we've both expressed how probably the most important thing that needs to happen in politics in America right now is that we have a strong social democratic voice and also like representation in Congress, because it really is about time that people heard actually representative of like a lot of the views people in the country hold, you know, views
But
on.
yeah, these progressive values and views, and like the socialist like um, values, and like the things that they're trying to accomplish are very appealing to the American public, and have great benefits to our society as America as well.
Yeah,
So it's finally now that we're sort of breaking ground, and we're seeing some ground being overtaken, like places like Florida and other places where we're able to see sort of a shift,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
because
So
people are talking about these policies,
yeah,
these more
so
progressive and leftist policies.
yeah, I think around 2016 we were seeing a shift in kind of national dialogue, especially in the you know in the camp of the Democratic Party. We were being introduced to a lot more leftist dialogue, but now we're actually seeing change that's reflected in the party leadership and the party rules and laws and everything. So I think this is a very good step forward. Most people who supported Bernie Sanders in 2016 presidential election support this ruling, but not everyone agrees with what we have to say. I think this is a headline from Huffington Post that says Democrats debate effect of superdelegate reform on racial representation. And this article mainly concerns what a woman by the name of Leah D. Daughtry had to say. And she made this tweet a while ago on the 25th of August. Now that people of color, women, and LGBTQ plus leaders have a significant say in the nomination process, suddenly the rules need to be changed, effectively eliminating their participation. Funny how that happens. Lucy moves the football again. I'm not sure what she meant by that last sentence.
Lucy,
Yeah.
she's a pastor, so Lucifer is who she's referring to.
Oh.
She has a religious background.
Yeah, yeah. I am. So is that a comment saying Lucy moves the football again?
No, it's not. I think it's just her way of being kind of cheeky and including faith in God in her tweet.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, like Leah D. Daughtry, like I don't know much about her and stuff, but like from her Twitter feed, she seems to be a very progressive person. She seems to be like a person that I think most people would honestly get along with. Who has clear progressive values. I think she had tweets in favor of the Andrew Gillum, the latest primary winner in Florida's DNC convention.
Yeah.
So, but I think I just isolated this tweet because I think it's like the most succinct example of how of the reaction that many establishment Democrats are having towards this. So I guess I want to gauge your response to this.
We would need to see the effect of, like, this could just be a reactionary comment that she made, and we've yet to see the effect of this, right? I personally think that decentralizing power gives people who are more grassroots and have less of a voice a chance to speak up.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of people who are doing grassroots, especially progressives, by the way, the last couple of years, are doing very grassroots, like passionate campaigning and running. And this, I think, will open up the floor for these people.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that, like, when you look at the candidates that progressive groups are running, particularly like Justice Democrats and Our Revolution and so on, if you actually look at their candidate count, like overwhelmingly they are women or people of color or both or LGBTQ people. So the idea that that by allowing more populist Bernie Sanders type people into the Democratic Party, the idea that this is somehow gonna detriment the power of the voices of people of color or the voices of women or LGBTQ people in the Democratic Party. I mean, I think that's just fallacious. Christine Halquist is, I think, the first transgender person who won a Democratic primary for governor, and I believe she is running for the governor of Vermont, and she is very much like a Bernie Sanders style Democrat. And we have people like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Andrew Gillum. I mean, these are all women, people of color, etc. And so the idea that the idea that the Bernie Sanders wing of the prime party is like somehow. First of all, like I don't even think there's much evidence to say that they're mostly white or male, and the idea that they have like, and the candidates who are running certainly are not, and even the policies that they're enacting, even if we're just talking about like the economic policies, I think these will like disproportionately benefit marginalized people.
Yeah.
So
sure.
yeah, I just want to bring attention to this article that was written, or essentially like I think it was legislative recommendations written by the Transgender Law Center. And the first thing they talk about is that private health insurance companies deny coverage to transgender people. Health insurance companies and medical providers rely on the gender binary, and many medical providers are transphobic. So,
Yes.
like, free healthcare is something that very squarely will, affect transgender people in America. It's something that, transgender people need, and, like, they need to be able to deal with their gender dysphoria medically. And
Yes.
the best way to make sure that, we need to make sure that it's open and accessible for transgender people of all incomes to be able to, deal with their dysphoria the way they want to,
Of course.
Yeah. And I think, and I'm also going to show this other article, which is by the National Center for Transgender Equality. And I'm just going to quote some of their statistics here. Family rejection and discrimination and violence have contributed to a large number of transgender and other LGBTQ identified youth who are homeless in the United States. An estimated 20 to 40% of more than the 1.6 million homeless youth are transgender or LGBTQ, So the idea that, for example, a universal housing program that people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Kanyela Ng have supported, the idea that this will disproportionately benefit marginalized people who often suffer disproportionately the effects of crappy economic systems,
I completely agree.
Yeah, so this really is like twofold, the fact that, Bernie Sanders, I think the only mainstream politician that I've really seen talk about, gender expanding people in recent times is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So not only are we like conventionally more socially liberal, as in, more socially accepting of transgender people, I think that argument is easy to make. Our policies will also benefit, people of color, women, and LGBTQ folks disproportionately.
Yeah, people who are affected disproportionately by systemic issues.
Yeah, and we don't even have to get into the fact that people of color, black people in this country are much more likely to be homeless, or have lower incomes, or are have increased probabilities of having wage theft conducted on them or something. So these universal solutions, like, yes, we're providing healthcare to a majority white country right now, but that will disproportionately benefit people of color.
Yeah, it'll benefit everyone within the country, and there, it's a net positive.
Yeah,
like there's little to no, even if negligible, effects in regards to the negative side of things.
Yeah.
So it's just, even if you want to take a more like capitalist perspective and be a healthy population, a population that is not built like weighted down by mental or physical barriers or burdens, can be more productive and work harder and longer.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's like, it doesn't matter overall, it's overwhelmingly positive, no matter what perspective you look at this. And so it's ridiculous that people still argue that single pay healthcare is nonsense, or it's too expensive, and all these other ridiculous arguments that people make.
Yeah, and
both
I think
on the left and the right.
Yeah, and I think I'm I think I'm becoming increasingly frustrated at establishment Democrats pretending that they have more that their concerns for people of color and LGBTQ people are somehow superior than the Bernie Sanders wing of the party.
The progressives.
Yeah. Oftentimes that the policies we're promoting will benefit the people that you claim to care the most about. Even though they're not even like our even though we intend to benefit everyone with our programs.
Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's all we have to say about this. I think I've been through all my talking points. Is there anything you want to add?
Oh, I think it's important that we, like we've been saying, we should be opening up the floor to more progressive candidates, and that I think overall this is what this removal of the superdelegates will do. Now in time, 5 years from now, it'll just be like a disaster? Who knows? But currently, it's better than what we were doing previously, which is paying your way through to become the Democrat-elect, which is absolutely shitty. It's what they did in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. They already had her picked out.
Yeah.
This is not how this should work.
Yeah, so I think we agree that's overall a good thing, and that the Democratic Party finally is going in the correct direction. But I think it also is interesting that they did not decide to completely eliminate superdelegates from the party. And what do you think that is? Even though they stripped all their powers, people still have the title of superdelegates, and it's weird that in maybe if the ballot is super contested, I don't know what the whole deal with that is. The fact that they still have some power, but it's in the closet.
It might just be for extenuating circumstances. Maybe there's just some people. There might be a really weird faction that's kind of sucking votes away from someone else that might be has a higher chance of winning. You know what I mean? The system probably isn't perfect.
Yeah, I think they were just trying not to piss off some establishment, Democratic Party insiders.
Yeah, sort of like an appeasement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might make sense too.
Or, I guess not an appeasement, just to make sure that they're not as mad as they, to be honest, I think they should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
That might be a good point.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all we have to say about that topic, I think. And now we're going to talk about
the land appropriation.
Yeah, the land appropriation without compensation that is occurring in South Africa right now. I think that's a very interesting topic, and I think we'll just jump on right to it. So
yeah, go for it.
So a while ago, there was controversy that South Africa was amending its constitution to allow the government to seize farms and, essentially plots of land that are mostly owned by, the white oligarchy in South Africa, with intentions to give it to black farmers or, I think mainly black farmers or, poorer farmers and stuff. So that's why we call this land appropriation without compensation, because I don't believe the South African government has much intention of even of paying too much of paying back too much of what the market share of the land is. So people like our favorite Tucker Carlson have recently, and this is why it's kind of on the news again, people like him have essentially weaponized this issue to essentially, feed into their white aggrievement and to, essentially pretend that, that whites in South Africa are somehow systematically oppressed or something. These are his takes, and Donald Trump probably watched that segment that Tucker Carlson did, and he tweeted out that he was recommending that his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, look into the situation and so on. So that's the basic overview of what's happening in South Africa and how Western countries are reacting to it. So I think it's an interesting issue for the most part, and this is something I think South Africa is very interesting because I actually heard this argument from someone I think who borders on kind of white nationalism maybe like a month ago. I was playing video games with friends, and one of my friend invited his friend who happened to be very politically conservative, and this is a topic that he brought up before I even saw it covered on any news outlet or any internet article. I saw him talking about South Africa. So this has been like an ongoing meme within the white nationalist circles, or within white nationalist sympathetic circles for a while, and now it's actually gaining like national coverage because of hosts like Tucker Carlson, who, like, if we're talking about like hosts on Fox News or like really establishment figures who coddle up very neatly or very closely to some of the ideas that white nationalists just like openly spread, it's Tucker Carlson, and now he has a direct line to the president with his platform, and now the president is talking about these things that fascists have been talking about for a while, and it really is like they come true for a lot of these white nationalist people.
Yeah, because it's propaganda. It's clips and sound bites and the ability to use this propaganda to further push their message of white genocide and all these nasty things that they're spewing with little to no foundation.
And I think South Africa is really interesting, and I think the reason they chose South Africa is because not many people know about the economic, political, colonial history of the country. Not many people know how not many people know anything about the political climate in that country, so it's easy to spread propaganda about things that people really don't know much about.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, this has been like a weaponized topic that white nationalists have been talking about for a while. And I think I just want to start bringing some basic facts that kind of pop this whole propaganda bubble.
Hell yeah. Give them to me. Give me them facts.
So first of all, the idea of land reform is not like some super radical thing. This is something that President Nelson Mandela argued for all the way in 1998. I'm reading an article right now by The Independent, written by Buchizia Metskaya, and it's mirrored in The Independent. And this was written in 1998, and I think we can quote Mandela directly here, in which he spoke to the KwaZulu-Natal province, and this is his quote directly. "Our land reform program helps redress the injustices of apartheid. It fosters national reconciliation and stability. It also underpins economic growth and improves household welfare and food security." So this meme... Oh, wait, 1 second. Okay, so this meme about South African land and it being appropriated, it's not something that has no historical presence. This is something that has
happened before.
That has happened before, and that has like foundation. It's not something that's coming out of nowhere. And also, like, there's this victim complex that a lot of people have built up, this narrative about, like, these poor white white farmers who are just being like stripped off their land. And first of all, there have been no property or farm seizures as of yet. Okay, the only thing that the South African government is trying to do right now is they're trying to like make the infrastructure, essentially the lawful infrastructure, including changes to the constitution and the passing of laws, in order to eventually maybe appropriate
reconfigure the land.
Yeah, reconfigure the land. And also, so I'm going to quote the South African president directly here.
Mm-hmm.
And so this isn't as if like white farmers are going to be stripped of their livelihood, everything. The South African president Cyril Ramaphosa has said that unused land, derelict buildings, and purely speculative landholding or circumstances where occupiers have strong historical rights and title holders do not occupy use of their land. So essentially he's saying that the first targets of our land appropriation is going to be land that has been underutilized by its owners, has either been, left unused, or they're buildings that people are no longer residing in and they're just rotting away, or they're purely speculative land holdings. So some people buy it in hopes that one day land prices will increase and that no one is actually using the land. So these are the first targets of this very moderate, to be honest, South African reappropriation program. That the fact that this land is just sitting there and not being used, and it's owned by a tiny fraction of South Africa's population, and all this fertile land that people could use to build wealth, or to build the economy of South Africa, which is has been suffering for quite a while now, just to free up this land.
Yeah.
So this is very much not a radical thing like the people on Fox News would like to believe. And also, like, a few words about President Ramaphosa in general. He is a very pro-business, Davos-friendly kind of person, and the stuff he's talking about has been supported by he in his op-eds to the Financial Times. And by the way, he's writing in the Financial Times. That should tell you something about him.
Yeah.
He cites the World Bank as as essentially people who have agreed with his economic assessment that land appropriation is something that needs to occur. And right now I'm showing a article by the Business Day that says IMF supports land reform as long as it's transparent and constitutional. So this is like huge neoliberal international organizations have okayed this. So the idea that this is some fringe radical takeover by black extremists in South Africa is just wrong. This is something that has a lot of historical continuity behind it, and it's something that really, if you look at it through South Africa's political lens, this isn't something that's very controversial at all.
Oh. Clearly, a lot of this is being used for the sake of propaganda. I mean, Fox News is, for lack of a better word, propaganda. All right, the nationalists, in regards to the white nationalists and the Nazis and the fascists, are using this as propaganda. They're like, look what's happening over in South Africa. Look how awful it is. They're stealing land from the hard-working white man, and this is clearly not happening yet. It is all purely in talks, and it's strictly to improve the land and to increase economic wealth for all of South Africa.
Yeah, and just in general, land is something that has a lot of economic power. One of the promises that here in America that people, the more radical anti-slavery advocates tried to enact was 40 acres and a mule, because people realize the fact that, and this is a very recurring theme in a lot of Black American history, is the fact that Black people in the United States or in South Africa have either have their lands stolen from them or have not been able to gain access to land, and that this is a huge barrier when it comes to the economic mobility of groups of people. Whether we're talking about the fact that not proper recompensation was given to the slaves, or the fact that redlining practices happened all across the country that stopped Black people from getting high quality housing, which this is one of the first things that you need if you want to give a group of people economic mobility and economic prosperity in a country, is land, because land is very useful. You can farm on it and it builds value over time. And a house you bought in 1950 is worth 5 times a house today.
Yeah, and it's not just housing, it's also business opportunities. You can have offices. You could build with more land reclaimed and distributed amongst people. There'll be more competition between businesses that might crop up. You know, maybe it starts out as farming and agriculture at first, but you know, eventually when education becomes more available in the area because the government's may be able to put a public school down because the government owns the land, or they're able to put things like wells and other infrastructure items like that down into that land, it'll be beneficial because currently it's private property.
Yeah. So yeah, this is something that's like very basic, but it's been sadly
We do it
weaponized.
in here. We do it here in the states. Like if we're building a utility, we'll pay the person some money and build the utility on that land. That's not uncommon to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think essentially the point of this is that, if you hear like conservatives and if you hear, people on the alt right talking about this, they will tell you stories, for example, about like, white South African farmers who were, beaten up by black people and stuff, and they will try to like give you these anecdotal type of evidence, this anecdotal evidence to try and scare you, to try to think that, white people are somehow like this super oppressed minority in South Africa. And I think I just want to bring attention to this other article by The Guardian right now. Murders of farmers in South Africa is at a 20-year low. And if you look at this other chart that's flashing on the screen right now, crime has dropped precipitously since apartheid ended. So,
Yes.
like this narrative that white nationalists have essentially built, that white nationalists would go so far as to say that the apartheid government was legitimate, and that the ANF and other African leaders had no right to take away the power of the white man. But like clearly,
Yeah.
but like clearly, this narrative that they're spinning, that somehow the black people in South Africa are just terrorizing farmers, or that or murdering them or something. Like it's just like it's not empirically founded. It's all fear mongering, it's all scaremongering, and it's all in order to push a narrative of white victimization, which is extremely harmful for our public discourse.
Yeah. That's the whole purpose. It's the whole reason for them existing, is to push this narrative piece, this narrative over the actual what's happening.
Yeah. And I think also like this case with South Africa is also like often compared, especially in like conservative and white nationalist circles, is compared to what happened in Zimbabwe, and how after like land was taken away from the white farmers, apparently Zimbabwe went to shit, proverbially. But I think that's just like, it's a very wrong assessment of the situation, because if you actually like read like the history of like what happened in Zimbabwe, it wasn't like an organized, methodical, and mainly peaceful transfer of ownership like what's happening in South Africa right now. Robert Mugabe of Uganda like certainly did not have the it was just like a very chaotic process. Like people stripped up their lands like that evening, and people did not know where it was going to, and a lot of land ended up being underused after being reappropriated. But that's not what's happening in South Africa right now. What's happening in South Africa is like a very systematic and very thought out approach that makes sure that if yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question. Are there any talks of the South African government giving some monetary compensation back to the people they're reclaiming land from?
I believe there's some, but I think mainly it's appropriation without. I think we'll have to really get into without compensation. But I think we'll really have to get into the fine print of whether or not like specific people are eligible for certain, recompensation for their land. I think like it's generally going to be at like a small or like somewhat of a fraction of the
it's not going to be what they bought it for, or what it's going to be worth, but it's going to be some type of compensation for the land.
I think.
Okay.
Well, you'll have to look at the fine print of what they're doing.
Yeah, I'll look into it further, but I think as long as there's some type of compensation, then I'm not totally opposed to it.
Yeah.
Because like I said previously, we do this in the States. We give them market value. I mean, it'd be difficult if you're the South African government, it may be difficult to provide that value. So there's other ways of going about doing that. Also, distributing the wealth may be more beneficial than giving the already vastly
Yeah.
rich
Yeah,
more
I mean,
money.
yeah, it also
So
depends. So like, yeah, it's
it
like a
yeah, it ultimately depends on the as you said, fine print.
yeah. So if it's like a working class white farmer or something who's just being robbed of all his land or something, even though that might have like certain economic practicalities, like in the like you're empowering a group of people who did not have, the positive economic impact of that action might be positive. Might overwhelm the negative economic impact, but I would still think that that would be slightly immoral. But I don't think that's happening like as of yet. So as we've discussed, it's mainly unused land and speculative land holdings that are being targeted for now, and that it's mainly like the oligarchs of South Africa. Like the fact that I think the white South African population is like about 10% of the population, but they own more than 70% of the land.
Yeah.
So these are a lot of people who are not really like economically hurting, but who still
Yeah.
who still believe that they have the right to all this land that was stolen, in the colonial times, which is another angle to this. Is that
True.
this land really was stolen, and it's not even like far off stolen. It's not even like people came in the 1700s and stole it. A lot of
It was like during apartheid.
yeah, it was during apartheid, and
was
and the lead up to apartheid. So it was like
70s and 80s and shit.
yeah, it was very much like people whose parents at maximum had their land stolen from them or something. So yeah, this. So I think the main reason I wanted to cover this is mainly just to go like just give a counter voice to a growing narrative that's at least to what I've seen so much thus far has not really like been addressed by left wing media, and I think that's kind of growing concern to me. Okay, so
yeah. So I think it's good. It's good to spread information and try to look into the facts a little bit more before we make a judgment call. I think that clearly, if you're getting your facts from places like Breitbart, Infowars, and propaganda networks like Fox News, then perhaps maybe it's a little skewed, and it's not something you should really take as fact or reality just quite yet.
Yeah, I showed a bunch of articles on the stream, by the Washington Post, by the Independent, by the Conversation, by the Guardian, and I think there's also a good one by the Atlantic, the dangerous myths about South African land seizures. So if you want to read up more on this, I would suggest these sources that I showed on stream, and I will also just advise you to like try and read. President Ramaphosa's direct writings in the Financial Times. He wrote one recently in response to Trump's tweets, and he wrote one like I believe a while ago, which was like a more thorough breakdown of what is happening in terms of what his of what his party intends to do. The African National Congress, the ANC, intends to do in terms of land reappropriation. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we'll head over to our next topic of discussion, and I'll let you speak a little more about this one, because I think this is something that both of us have more of an interest in, or at least more of a background in.
Yeah, I'm more of a gamer guy. I've been talking about this in other discords for a little bit. It's an interesting topic, and it's an unfortunate one as well.
Yeah. So, what we're going to talk about is the recent shooting that has occurred in Jacksonville, Florida, at a video game tournament streaming Madden. So I think there's a video, like you can watch the video online. It's essentially of a live stream.
Trigger warning for sure.
Yeah. I'm not gonna play it right now, but
yeah. Okay, good. That's pretty graphic for YouTube.
Yeah, it's it's essentially of a live stream, and it's mainly the audio of they were streaming Madden, and there was a small face cam, but the face cam soon disappears as the shooting begins, and you can hear people shouting and screaming and stuff, and it's so, and the person who carried this out was, I think he was just salty at the fact that he lost a video game or something, or he was not accepted in the tournament, and just decided to shoot people up. So yeah, I think it's just an overall tragic story, but I think it kind of like, the fact that like people like him are, allowed to get guns somehow, is, I think it's just an indictment of.
It's there's a whole slew of issues, right? There's so many things that we could talk about. Why wasn't it's like, why does con and game tournament competitions and stuff like that, why does it now have to be so heavily regulated? Florida is one of the easiest places to purchase a firearm, and this is very evident because of what happened. I think there may have been signs or telltale signs that this was sort of this apparently he lost. What happened was he lost the game, he left, and he came back. He left to go to his truck and came back with his firearm and start shooting up the place. And then as soon as the police were called, he killed himself. That is the story of what happened. You can probably read it a bit more to go into it, but that is a brief synopsis of what happened. He's a 24-year-old man, so he was actually able to he was of age to purchase a firearm. Apparently he's from Baltimore, so that's another. Oh man, like I take issue with the fact that there weren't really clear-cut signs like of his mental health or his aggression in regards to like his ability to act upon this kind of crime. I take issues with how easily he was able to get into the building. Like there's a large failing on the part of gun regulation and security on the tournament's part, right?
Yeah, I think that's something we can talk about. Like, what are some steps that, because this is happening like every month, every other month, or I mean, yeah, every month, probably every other week, but we don't hear about it unless it's like a big shooting where like multiple people are injured. Like, you ever notice that, like, if there's a mass shooting and it's like 2 or 3 people have died, or like 2 people have died and 2 people are injured, like that doesn't even hit the radar.
Yeah.
Like national news doesn't even cover it. It has to be something big like this, where I believe 2 people died and 11 injured or something, for us to actually pay attention to it. This happens every day in America.
Yeah, it's just sad. It's overall sad, and it's something that we need to stop. We need to look at this as a country and realize and reconcile that there are things that we can and should be doing with gun regulation and gun control. Period.
Yeah. So I think some of the things we can really agree on is the idea that we should have a federal background check, that gun purchases, wherever they're from, you should go through a check, like, just like if you're going to an airport and about to board an airplane, even though you're buying a commercial product, which is an airplane ticket, you are expected to go through airport security, and
I think this will have to happen with public events like this.
Yeah. So
from now on, that's going to be the standard.
Yeah.
I think that there are some, because it's in the Constitution, it's going to be kind of more difficult to regulate because it's considered a right in the amendments. So we may have to go into the amendment and amend the amend what exactly this is all about.
I mean, to be honest, I don't even think we need to go that far. I think we just need to like reinterpret. I think the main thing that's kind of interesting about American history is the fact that oftentimes the amendments don't change. It's just how people end up interpret those amendments. So for example, who includes a well-regulated militia? Is
Yeah.
the main question, you know. So I think back when founding fathers were alive, that well-regulated militia meant the states, you know. The states were allowed to build militias so they can build state militaries that can
Yes.
thwart off the British if the British ever uh, want to
Or
invade
the
again.
federal government, even.
Yeah, or the
If the
federal
central
government.
federalized government that we built attacked, the states' rights, then
Yeah.
that's when the state-run militia would rise up and fight against that centralized power.
Yeah, so I think it's just a huge misnomer to understand the Second Amendment as like an individual liberty, because it wasn't penned that way, and only very recently have we really started like viewing it as like an individual liberty.
I'd have to take a look at that. It's not very. It's pretty common interpretation. I'm not sure how recent that
Yeah,
would
I
be.
think it's a common interpretation right now, but you know, I think the well regulated, the fact that regulated is within the amendment itself, you know,
Yeah.
that is something that, you know, I think a more liberal interpretation really has to be taken into.
Well, it's also has to do like with gun culture as well. Like there's a whole bunch of things that we need to tackle kind of all at once.
That's something I agree with, like, because
a pragmatic view of the situation, just real briefly, is that if you think we can ban guns and get rid of all of the guns in America, you're actually insane. It would be nearly impossible.
And I mean, I think like banning guns, so yeah, it's impossible. You're not going to get all the guns, you know. A gun buyback program like that would be amazingly hard to pull off. But I think it's
stricter regulations and harsher punishments on private sales of guns and the private manufacturing of guns. Harsher taxes on the continued purchase of a multitude of guns and ammo. A screening system of some kind that includes violent crimes and other stuff like that.
Yeah, and then we can have a gun buyback program, you know, like a limited gun buyback program in which, you know, you give people...
There should be you give people money, market value, and they purchase their gun back.
Yeah, and I think that's mainly just so that, you know, we can remove all these guns from, you know, there's so many guns in circulation that, you know, we can put a dent in that, and, you know, we'll make crime less, you know, hard to commit. And also, like, I think the most important is probably for me is a waiting period, because you know, people who want to commit suicides or people who want to you know, commit atrocities, oftentimes they do it on an impulse, you know, and that impulse will last 2 to 3 days or something, and if we have a waiting period for about a week or something, during
even
which
a month or two,
or you know, during which we can do a background check on, you know, people. You know, I think it's been proven that the Dylan Roof case would just not have happened, you know, if the you know, the existing regulations, you know, were already in place.
Harsher regulations of keeping firearms in homes as well.
Yeah, and I
think the instance where the Parkland shooting, right, in the high school, that also happened in Florida. Do you remember that instance? The shooter obtained the firearm via his family home.
Wow, yeah.
There was or someone within the family or a friend. Like, so he knew where the gun was, he knew where the ammunition was, and he obtained it. Yeah, a waiting period and penalties on people that don't have like gun safes or some type of lock and key, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Like, we need to give like gun licenses to people who we can make sure know how to handle a gun safely, you know, who know the safety precautions that you know, we need to pay attention to when you know, giving guns to people. I think we should also give like free gun safes to people, you know. Give
some type of subsidized, that could work as well.
Give free you know, essentially tutoring to people.
I would like a test, sort of like the driver's license test,
where it's like, you know, do you know how to safely stow away your firearm? Do you know how to safely operate it? Do you know the proper procedures? And then you take a test. Yeah. You pay a fine, and then you get your license. I mean, not even a fine. I don't even think, like, I think to make it as easy as possible, we shouldn't even make a fine, you know?
Well, or coming out of taxes or something. These programs have to be funded somehow. Like,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess that's, but I guess that's,
Like even when you pay for like you have to pay for your driver's license,
yeah.
like to receive your driver's license or your ID or your permit or whatever. There's a small cost to that. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah, but I mean, I think this is all anyway, like, very small.
Small, pragmatic, and it's not even like a large hurdle, right?
Yeah,
It's just it everything in conjunction or everything combined will make a system that will protect people and keep stuff like this from happening.
yeah. But I think I just want to talk about mainly like this argument that some people in the left are making. I believe it was like a retired Supreme Court justice who are outright saying things like, "I would be okay with guns being taken away or guns being banned as as a whole." Like, I guess, like, what would you say to those people who are kind of viewed sometimes as to the left of us, but
Very left of us. What would I say to those people that say this isn't enough?
yeah, who say
Um,
that like the only thing we need to do is
the
ban
only thing
guns?
that'll happen, yeah, the only thing that we need to do is ban guns. You're fucking delusional, and you'll never get anything done. That's what I'd say to them.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say like, and
You don't, you have no understanding of what like living in America is like, and you have a lack of understanding of how cultish the gun culture is, and how insane the culture of around guns is in America as well.
yeah, but I mean, I
Um,
think even just have more like like even if we don't even want to think about this as like a pragmatic issue, I don't think it's like a good thing to like uh take away
it's
all
it,
people's
there's
guns.
people out there that are pushing propaganda that the government and whoever else, the lefties, are trying to take your guns. It would stir, that kind of talk stirs violence, and
Yeah,
it's not productive.
it's not productive, and I don't even think
It's easier to convince somebody. I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and I think like also like I think it's certainly like I think responsible people, provably responsible people should own guns, either for um, either for their self protection or like yeah, either for the self protection or just because they want it for sporting reasons. I don't think that's such an unreasonable thing, but we have to make sure that the people who do own guns are people who are mentally sound of mind, who can be trusted and so
Yes.
on. So I
Yes,
don't.
you're mentally sound of mind and you know how to operate your firearm and you've gone through the proper steps,
Yeah,
right?
and
I maybe in the future some type of gun registration database.
yeah,
Um,
and we can register all guns like we register cars, like with the license plate number and stuff.
Governing authority, all the power is justifying hierarchy and is therefore more right wing in regards to taking all the guns away. Is that what you're saying? Grappling hooks. Read my comment aloud. Yeah. Also, grappling hooks mentioned it's fine to discriminate by mental health in this
Yeah,
case as well.
and I mean,
I
I wouldn't even say like so like yes, like violent schizophrenia, of course, like
Yeah, I
that's
think the wording would have to be very fine tuned
yeah.
and careful.
But like,
I
let's say
think
someone with like slight autism or something, I don't think like that's a danger,
or
you know?
or even depression or something, like if or
Well,
they're just sad or
not severe
if so
depression.
not severe depression, or at the very least like it would disqualify them from purchasing a firearm if or having a firearm, say if
Yeah,
they go to a therapist or a psychiatrist or something. Like it should be the reason why they're going, not because they are going.
yeah, and I think
The
yeah,
laws would have to be very very carefully worded and not vague at all.
and I think that's
um
I think we're kind of touching on another important point, which is something that I'm kind of frustrated. Not much more people talk about is the fact that how if we have a universal background check system, or if we have like a license system, we need to make sure that we really need to make sure that uh, people in marginalized groups are not disproportionately unallowed to get guns for whatever reason. So for example, a person conducting a background test, might think that black people for some reason are more threatening. That's this implicit bias, and therefore black people, even though they have all the good qualifications, might not be able to get guns as easily as a white person. And I think like safeguards have to be built into the system before we even uh, you know make the system, you know. I think that's a big concern of
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah, of course. These pragmatic steps. See, what's crazy is that these are pragmatic, and like these are already hard pills to swallow for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So it's like and then people, and then other people on the same side or our side on the left will be like, we should ban all guns, and I'm like, ah, god damn it, now we can't get anything done.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I'm so sick
yeah,
of it.
and I also don't think like the people who say ban all guns, like I don't even feel like they're really like leftists, you know. I feel like hardcore leftists, you know, like would actually be very sympathetic to the Second Amendment because they'll have
No,
sympathies.
no. I think we shouldn't. I don't think we should use the true Scotsman fallacy on them. Like they're just as much of as a lot. Like we should just be more critical of them.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying like the people who say ban all guns are not on the left. I'm just saying like, you know, when we're talking about far lefties, you know, is
Yeah.
the type of people who would, for example, sympathize with the Black Panther Party and you know revolution or you know tried to be revolutionary movements like that. You know,
Yeah.
saying that guns are necessary for you know the violent overthrow of capitalism or something. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm certainly saying
So
that there are people on the left who, like, you know, who say ban all guns, and I don't think they're being constructive. I don't think they're helping our cause. You know, and I don't even think that's a just thing to do. You know, like banning all guns. I don't want to. I don't think that's like a. Um.
I don't want. I also don't want to give my guns away to somebody like Trump either.
Yeah.
So
So yeah. So I think. You know. So I think like you know the outlines that countries like, you know, many countries that have still have guns, but you know have outlined like, you know, we in the United States for some reason we've just taken it so extreme that you know our idea of like a civil society is where you know no one, no matter their mental illness or no matter their age or whatever, can just should be able to purchase a gun. And I think that's just, you know,
absolutely wrong.
yeah, we're just talking about like basic moderation here, you know. But even that is just so like that's viewed as radical, you know. Basic moderation to you know what people can own, you know, is viewed as
Yeah.
radical in this country, and it's pretty toxic.
No, I agree entirely.
What's grappling hook saying?
Grappling hooks is it is less left wing taking away guns. Refer to my comments earlier. Leftist purity tests what for the win. Yeah, yeah. Black people are more basically saying like the implicit biases of racist whites and stuff like that as well. Like
Yeah,
we shouldn't cave into their needs and wants.
yeah, and yeah,
We
I
should
also
try to.
don't agree with giving Trump all of our guns.
Yeah, no.
Definitely not. So yeah,
The
I mean,
current government's too right wing.
yeah, I mean, and this is like the thing that's interesting is that like this conversation has occurred and has ended with you know so many basic things, you know, like airplanes and stuff, you know, like one person decided to you know bomb an airplane with the bombs in his shoes, and
Yeah.
every time I go take a flight, which is regularly, I take flights very regularly, I have to take off my shoes, you know, almost
Yeah.
3 times a trip. And you know I guess I accept that, you know, like to be honest, like what the TSA is doing is actually much less justifiable, but I feel like that's a different story. The point is like, you know, we've all accepted the fact that our individual liberties at some point need to be you know need to be like that we can't have ultimate individual
Regulated.
liberty. That you know
Yeah.
at some point they stop because you know we need to care about what so many guns in society is going to do, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
Are there any
I-
comments from the audience?
Grappling hooks mentioned leftist purity tests and stuff like that, which you know I'm constantly told that the left doesn't do. But anytime I talk about this kind of stuff with the left, I get purity tested all the time. So, yeah, yeah, that's a complaint I'll readily just pull out of my repertoire, my utility belt. It's like I'm sick of it. It's not productive. Stop purity testing people that are on your side. Stop it.
Whoa, okay.
Fuck.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
think
not it.
that's all we had to talk about.
Yeah,
And
that's
if
all
the
we had to
audience
talk
has any
about.
more questions, you can type them in now and we'll respond to you. 3 people
Yeah.
watching.
Hey man, you gotta start somewhere, okay?
Collective liberty is better than individual liberty. I agree in some circumstances.
To a certain extent, yes.
Yeah, but I don't. I'm also like,
For the most part, winky
oof.
face.
Also, like, I think like I think these are spooks in that sometimes the line between collective liberty and individual liberty is very thin.
Yeah.
Like, people's right to life is greater than the right to arms, to be honest.
Yeah.
I agree with that, yeah.
Yeah.
That some people, yeah, that we have to take into account the fact that people are going to die if. And yeah, property rights are not the only rights that matter. Right to life is a right as
the
well.
life of the life of the people. It's very important.
Okay. I think that's the end of our stream. This was a very constructive conversation.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
All right, you are welcome. Everyone go subscribe to Zach's channel, InferiorDesign. It should be in the link in the description.
Thank you.
Yeah, and look forward to doing this again.
For sure. I'd love to do this as well.
Well, okay.
Again.
Stream is stopping